And when we talk about heroism, can't help but discuss Joey Jones, because Joey, you served in Afghanistan after 9/11, and last month we were fortunate enough to mark your Alive Day. Your thoughts today?
Yeah, I don't know that anything I've done is heroic, but I was able to serve alongside a generation of Americans that I consider to be heroic. No one can ever say we didn't answer the call. And I think that's just something I'm so proud of, not personally, but as an American, that in my lifetime, this major attack happens that kills thousands of specifically innocent civilians, and 18, 19, 17-year-olds answered the call. I mean, you meet people that were drafted in Vietnam that are absolute heroes, but they were drafted, they were told to go. Vietnam wasn't something that everyone jumped behind. The next major conflict was this, and this country galvanized itself behind the idea that this happened on our homeland and we would not let it happen again. And by all intents and purposes, we haven't let it happen again. So that's one thing to come out of this 20-year war that I don't know if we get to hang our hat on, but we can take some pride in. So the politics that surrounds it and what happened last August is a conversation we will have and have had. But today, I think we remember that when push comes to shove, this is a country of people who will fight back and fight the righteous fight. My experience in Iraq and Afghanistan was that when we didn't understand our purpose of being there anymore, we were still there for each other. And that's the exact same spirit that we answered on 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Very well put. And Laura, did you have something that you were wanting to say with regard to what Joey was?
Well, I feel like, you know, you look at the way we did depart from Afghanistan, and obviously we were there partially in response to what happened 21 years ago today. And I think that it's been a big reminder for people that, you know, I just continue to think about how united we were then, but how divided we continue to feel now. And we really are so divided. And one of the things that I find very interesting that I actually learned today is that in only 14 states in America, is it in the school curriculum to teach our children about September 11th, 2001. I found that absolutely shocking. Because,
shameful.
Yeah, it's really shameful, because we know that if you do not learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. And so there is a New York congressman who has put forward the idea that, you know, we should have this mandated across, you know, all 50 states. And it's a shame that, you know, it would have to go to a federal level like that. But truly, I was shocked to find that out. And I think about my kids who are 3 and 5, who obviously will learn about 9/11. I'll talk about it, hopefully in school. But for all of us sitting here today, we all experienced it in a very real way. We all remember where we were the moment it happened. There's a generation coming up now who, you know, these are the next great leaders of our country. Some of these people are not being taught truly what happened on September 11th, and that's really frightening.
It really was jaw-dropping when I learned about this congressman introducing this resolution yesterday, 21 years after the fact. It just, I mean, it blew my mind, because, again, I think most of us just assumed that that was policy in schools across the country, right?
But I love here that we, 21 years later, the impact that this had on our lives, that we still remember like we do 21 years later, this impacted all of us. And the fact that we remember those who lost their lives, we remember their lives, we remember their sacrifice. But maybe to your point, Lara, I'm so concerned right now about the dishonor that happens to those who gave their lives. The dishonor when, you know, during you know, September 12th, under every bridge I went, there was an American flag. We rallied around the flag, and now we have people who kneel in front of the flag. We have terrorists coming across the southern border. We're not teaching our kids about the great American history that we have in our founders. The fact that we're using the tools that we gave the federal government to go after terrorists, we're using those tools to go after American patriots. That's what frustrates me, and I think it's a disservice and a dishonor to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, and those who made the sacrifice like Joey made, who gave parts of their body and their lives on the battlefield, that we wouldn't stand up for the principles for which we were fighting, but instead have warped those principles into something completely contorted and different than what we thought we were fighting for.
And I'm just curious, when you think about some of the politics and some of the things that have come to frustrate people, right, and disappoint people over the past 2 decades, even though we do come together on this day, I'm curious what you think about this idea of unity, that we are still unified in some way. And I want to take a listen to something that the cousin of John Giovanni, who died in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, says about 9/11 and how it united the country.
I want to remind everyone over there, our politicians and elected leaders surrounded by a border right now, it took a tragedy to unite our country. Back then, no one cared if you were Republican, Democrat, age, gender, race, ethnicity. We were united. It took a tragedy to unite us. And I want to remind all of you there, it should not take another tragedy to unite our nation, because if I have to stand at this podium again or another podium for another event because of lives lost, because of dereliction of duty, it's gonna hurt, just like it hurts me.
So, Joey, on days like today, we find patience, right, in holding on to that unity. But as the days pass, a lot of times we become divided.
I lost my legs in this war, and it was a good deal. I don't regret it. I'm proud of it. There's not a day I wake up, whether I'm in pain or not, that I go, man, I wish I had that to do again. I would go to college instead of the Marine Corps. That's never even crossed my mind. Nothing about that is a regret, and I don't think many that I served with feel that way, if any at all. This country's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for when terrorists want to take down buildings, and it's worth fighting for when politicians want to divide us with rhetoric. It's worth fighting for. I never cared about Washington, D.C., like I did every small town in this country I've gotten to visit over the last 10 years. I don't have anything against D.C., but it doesn't represent me any more than anywhere else does. What this country has in it, I was in Gig Harbor, Washington 2 days ago. I was in Houston, Texas yesterday, and I'm in New York City today. And what I know is there's an equal amount of people in each one of those places, as vastly different as they are, in Atlanta when they get home tonight, that absolutely love this country, not because of the size of our military, not because of our free system of government. They love this country because it's home, and it's made up of people that if their house burned down tomorrow, those people would come help them. They would raise money. Where I'm from, we call it a cakewalk. We go have a cakewalk. Everybody bakes a cake, and we raise money doing it, and then they get all the money and the cake. We do things to help each other out. This country is a patchwork of communities, and when those planes hit those buildings, to include the Pentagon and a field in Pennsylvania, they attacked and created an entire nation community. They allowed me, as a Georgian that had New York, was no closer than Saudi Arabia. These are just big words of big cities that I've never heard of or seen. But it allowed me on September 11th, 2001, as a little town in Georgia, out on the football practice field, to feel connected to those people. When those towers came down, by the end of that day, with good adults in my life, I understood that those Americans had just paid the ultimate sacrifice. Those that ran into that building to help save people, those weren't trained military guys and gals with uniforms on that had 3 months at Parris Island. Those were individuals that were leaving work, people in business suits. We told this morning the story of the red bandana. And just those types of stories are abundant because that's who this country is. And when I hear Americans get so frustrated and mad at each other over political things, a part of me just wants to understand, do you not understand those are still human beings? We are still in this country together, and you should be in love with it and in love with the people in it.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.